What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Today we're going to be watching a video titled Baltimore and Detroit Took Opposite Paths to Revitalization. Let's see what this video is about.
Detroit and Baltimore are both cities in the midst of a major comeback, but the way they're getting there is completely different. One city is concentrating most of its efforts into revitalizing its downtown core, while the other is seeing redevelopment scattered across various parts of the city, with relatively little investment in the central business district. So which one works better? I was in Detroit this past weekend, and just from walking around, it's very clear that downtown is the primary focus.
Wow, Detroit looks so nice.
Starting at downtown and heading out 1 to 2 miles, the city has been completely transformed in the past 2 decades. The investment is apparent in every direction you look. Renovations, new builds, ongoing construction is everywhere, and the streets are incredibly well maintained. Landscaping is immaculate, and there's minimal graffiti or trash anywhere.
I was just about to say it looks really clean.
This downtown revitalization has been spearheaded by philanthropists, investors, and construction professionals. And all this momentum concentrated into the downtown area has helped build the story surrounding Detroit's comeback. And justifiably so, in my opinion. When you're walking around downtown Detroit, it no longer feels like a declining Rust Belt city, but instead a high-end downtown that can compete with just about any around the US. One of my favorite projects in Detroit isn't the biggest, but it acted as a catalyst that kicked off an entire block's transformation, and in a decade, it was unrecognizable for the better. Baltimore, on the other hand, has chosen a different path. Significant revitalization is underway, but
Wow.
on the other hand, has chosen.
Oh, that must have been such a satisfying job to do. I just love this. I know you guys sent me some videos of how New York was built, but something about like seeing how things progress is so nice.
A different path. Significant revitalization.
That's really cool.
Is underway, but instead of it being concentrated into one contiguous area, the Baltimore development has been much more scattered. On the east side, Johns Hopkins is pouring billions of dollars into expanding its campus and transforming the surrounding neighborhoods. Waterfront revitalizations along the Patapsco River, like Harbor East, Harbor Point, and Port Covington are all progressing. Plus, there's the transformation of large chunks of formerly industrial areas along the east side of the city, and the Perkins redevelopment, where close to 15 blocks of the city were leveled and are being currently rebuilt. But all the while, downtown sits relatively idle. There's some projects here and there in the downtown area, but nothing that remotely rivals what's going on in Detroit's downtown. So which is better? With the Detroit strategy, because of the geographic concentration of the investment, momentum has arguably built up quicker. You have entire streets that are seemingly renovated all at once.
Everybody's trying to buy into the comeback and invest.
This is what they should do here. I wish, like, just renovate little parts of, because it's getting out of hand in my town. There's more graffiti than wall paint probably outside.
Get a deal. So like properties that are within a certain mile radius of downtown.
This also means that Baltimore and Detroit are probably like good places to invest right now, no? For someone out there. I mean, it seems like they're both progressing quite well, no?
They've all gentrified, like in the terms of like how much they cost.
On the downside, by focusing all your efforts into one relatively small area.
See? In like 10 years from now, I'm gonna buy a little house like that that's completely wrecked and then revitalize it as well. And it's gonna be so pretty. Look at that little house, I love it.
Some neighborhoods outside of downtown are still neglected, despite all the investment that's flowing into the city. The Detroit comeback is very real, but despite the hype, there's still some rough neighborhoods, abandoned buildings, and huge vacant tracts of land everywhere. With the Baltimore revitalization style, on the other hand, it does spread out some of the investments. At least by being geographically spread out, it prevents the large-scale dead zones like Detroit has. On the downside, it can feel a little bit disjointed, with somewhat isolated developments springing up here and there and not really tying into the urban fabric the way that some might like it to. And it's much harder to build a cohesive comeback story narrative without the obvious and visible downtown transformation. So there's pluses and minuses to both styles, but one thing that Detroit has made abundantly clear: if you want positive national publicity, turning around the downtown core is absolutely the key. And good PR isn't just about making politicians feel good about themselves. It's about attracting further investment and convincing those families from the county that they do want to come into the city for a baseball game a couple times a year. And it's about drawing large conventions and other events. And it's about having that company that was thinking about leaving the city for the suburbs stay where they're at. As they say, perception is reality. So despite Baltimore dropping the ball, in my opinion, and neglecting its downtown for the last couple decades, it actually presents a massive opportunity for the city. They could build a similar narrative to what Detroit has built, but only if they shift some of their focus in redevelopment and revitalization to downtown. No amount of suburban-looking development at Port Covington.
This looks so nice too. I love it.
Miles from downtown is going to build a comeback story like the one that...
This kind of looks like, may I say it? It does kind of look like Finland though, just a little bit. Minus that huge truck there in front of the building. But this is really pretty.
Detroit is built. The only thing that can build that story is a resurgence of the downtown. People from out of town need to be able to walk through the downtown and say, "That was surprisingly nice. I've heard bad things about this city, but that just wasn't my experience." That's the kind of reaction that you need in order to build the story that Detroit's built. And unfortunately, most people strolling through downtown Baltimore just don't have that reaction right now. And for all the negative things about Baltimore's downtown, it does have the bones to be a very cool downtown, if some of its problems could be addressed and improved upon. It has one of the highest percentages of buildings on the Registry of Historic Buildings of any city in the country. The architecture is unique. By American standards, its history goes way back. And the skyline, while not the most impressive or the tallest, is truly one of a kind due to its location around the Inner Harbor. So what's the biggest thing separating Detroit's downtown from Baltimore's downtown? To me, it can be boiled down to one word: effort. You can't have a booming downtown when you have dozens of buildings that look like this. You can't have a booming downtown when you have an open-air drug market like the one at Lexington Market. And you can't have a
What? Open-air drug market. Okay.
booming downtown when you let developers sit on neglected, derelict buildings and holes in the ground for decades at a time. This is obvious stuff with largely straightforward solutions, and yet the Baltimore political class has chosen to allow it to continue for decades. Just for example, let's compare Woodward Avenue in Detroit and Howard Street in Baltimore. Both are historical main streets, both are served by light rail, and both are in
Historical main streets. Okay, I see.
very close proximity to the sporting and event venues. So, both are extremely high visibility streets, important to people that may be visiting the city from out of town. Can you spot any differences between the two? Which one would you feel safer walking down? The one that looks like it could fit right in Manhattan, or the one that looks like it could be the set of a horror
That was my alarm.
movie? And just to give you an idea of how long Howard...
No, but obviously this has probably a pretty big impact on the whole city, because I mean, even if other parts of the city were nice, this is like the most visited. And yeah, I guess the other one looked way better, but that's kind of what's been happening in Spain as well. They put a lot of effort into the most visited places, and then the people that actually live there don't live so well. So I wouldn't still say that neither of these ways are, you know, better than the other or vice versa. Hi, Fenty.
Street has been neglected. Look at some of the signs on the abandoned buildings. This one's advertising beepers. Beepers haven't been a thing for 25 years. It all boils down to no one has cared enough to make downtown Baltimore nice. The last couple minutes of this video are pretty Baltimore specific with recommendations and what I think they should do. But before I get into that, I just want to say a special thanks to the guys at Sanborn Construction and to Chris Harden. Both of them were incredibly generous with their time and showing me around Detroit and giving me a better understanding of what's going on with the Detroit comeback. Both of them have great YouTube channels and they're definitely worth checking out. And now back to my rant about downtown Baltimore. Unfortunately, this complete neglect is not limited to just Howard Street. Downtown Baltimore is full of obvious signs of neglect. Vacant lots and derelict buildings.
Wait, but wasn't the first one about Baltimore though? Or was it about Detroit? Because now I'm confused. Oh yeah, in Baltimore they were like scattered. So they're doing like scattered development instead of focusing on the main streets, and in Detroit they're focusing more on the visited areas.
Sit idle while developers sometimes take years or even decades to do anything with them, including this site that once was the Mechanic Theater, but then it was torn down and nothing was rebuilt. Then there's the infamous city-owned Superblock, a complete eyesore and failed development for multiple decades, and a danger to the community as evidenced by the 5-alarm fire that ripped through downtown last year. And then there's the State Center complex, which is arguably one of the best connected sites in the city as far as mass transit goes, and yet it's still completely underutilized. With Baltimore's office vacancy rate approaching 20%, developers should be looking at office to residential conversions. These aren't always the easiest to do, but depending on the construction of the building and a little creativity, they can be done. Baltimore does actually have a rapidly growing residential base within the central business district, but since it was traditionally so office heavy, it's relatively small compared to that of other cities. Continuing this growth while absorbing the no longer needed office space could be a win-win. And this is a topic for another video, but another thing that could be done would be switching from a traditional property tax system to a land value tax. With the land value tax, it charges a tax based on the value of the land only rather than the appraised value of the land and any improvements. The benefit is that with the land value tax, people aren't penalized by improving the land. It does penalize them, though, if they're sitting on potentially valuable land but not doing anything productive with it. It would prevent absentee speculators that are unfortunately common in struggling cities all around the country by making it no longer financially viable to just sit on derelict properties and vacant land. Interestingly, a previous Detroit mayor was actually a big advocate for this change, although it was eventually voted down as it got through the Michigan political process. And finally, there's the blatant crime that's allowed to happen in broad daylight. It's a city and everybody understands that some level of crime is inevitable. But what happens around Lexington Market goes so far beyond what should be acceptable. Baltimore could put a stop to it if they wanted to, but in recent years, there hasn't been a political or police administration willing to. So all this is not to say that Baltimore should put on some sort of fake facade just to get better PR. What I'm saying is that there's some very low-hanging fruit that if it was addressed in a way that it should have been addressed decades ago, it would be a huge shot in the arm from a publicity standpoint. People that I've talked to in Baltimore often complain that Baltimore is being unfairly judged. They'll say that the negative reputation is undeserved and that the city is actually great and that the people that are...
I mean, it doesn't look bad. I like, okay, the main street view was not very good, but apart from that, it doesn't look like bad, and they're still making developments even though it's a little scattered, right? I don't know if I'm following this video right. I'm confused. Where did you go? Hi, Wendy.
Afraid to come into the city are just being wimps. But like Detroit has demonstrated, a very large part of a city's reputation comes from people's perception of its downtown area. And to just be blunt, Baltimore's downtown isn't that great. It has potential, but there's so many obvious problems that have been neglected for years that, in my opinion, despite being someone who really likes the city of Baltimore, it's totally reasonable for someone to not be impressed with downtown Baltimore. But this neglect has been so blatant for so long that it presents sort of an interesting opportunity if a political administration is wise enough to recognize it. Baltimore does still have a rather poor reputation, meaning that a large-scale push to make downtown nice could really turn some heads. And unlike Detroit, Baltimore has the benefit of being quite a bit denser and having quite a bit more development scattered all around the rest of the city. Then you throw in the precipitous decline in murder rate that Baltimore's seen in the last couple years, which has already started to garner national attention, and the pieces are in place for Baltimore to be the next big comeback story, not so different than Detroit. To bring this all full circle to the Detroit-Baltimore revitalization that I started out with, I think both cities could learn a lesson or two from each other. For Detroit, that would be to remember that there's other parts of the city besides the spectacular downtown towers and sports arenas. And for Baltimore, the lesson is that downtown still does matter. If Baltimore wants to stop having so much negative press, transforming downtown is the way to change the story. Detroit and
I mean, I guess, but I might be a little biased because of where I'm living right now, honestly, and I think Baltimore is doing a great job because I see it here all the time where they only concentrate on the touristic areas and the visited areas, and then the people who actually live there, we like, it's not good at all. Like you take 2 steps off the main area and it's a completely different thing. So I feel like developing everything kind of gradually at the same time seems like a better way to go about it than to only focus on the most visited areas, because at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about this. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I'm not going to go on a rant right now. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys in the next video.